The island of Sodor is surrounded by beautiful blue sea. It has fields of green and sandy yellow beaches. There are rivers, streams and lots of trees where the birds sing. There are windmills and a coal mine and docks where visitors to the island arrive. The island also has lots and lots of railway lines. Who's that puffing down the track? It's Thomas. Hello, Thomas. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Island of Sodor. Edward is the same colour as Thomas and the same size as James. He can pull carriages and push trucks. And he often works as a back engine. But Edward is old and not as strong as the other engines, so sometimes Edward feels left out. The Duke and Duchess of Boxford came to visit their new summer house. They came on their own private engine called Spencer. Spencer is big and silver and very fast. When Spencer pulled into Knapford, his driver had exciting news for him. "You have beaten Gordon's record," he said. "Of course," boasted Spencer. "I'm faster and finer than all the engines on Sodor put together." The Fat Controller's engines were very cross. "Spencer's just a big silver show-off," sniffed Gordon, and everyone agreed. The Fat Controller spoke to the engines. "Spencer will take the Duke and Duchess to their summer house. Another engine will take their furniture." The Fat Controller's engines saw the chance for a race. "Please, sir," said Thomas, Percy, Gordon and James, all together. "May I go?" "You all have other work to do," boomed the Fat Controller. "Edward will take the furniture." James and Gordon groaned. "Fancy sending a back engine to do an express engine's job," sniffed Gordon. "He'll lose the race and let the old railway down," said James. Thomas and Percy were cross. Edward was their friend. "Spencer has a bigger boiler," said Thomas, "but that just means more hot air." "And on his steam he can beat a pouty puffer any day," added Percy. Edward set off, slow and steady. "Will do my best, will do my best," he puffed. Spencer set off and quickly passed Edward. "I've won already," he boasted. And with a whoosh, he was gone. Edward came to the bottom of a steep hill. The freight was heavy and he felt very tired. He huffed and he puffed and was soon at the top. He could see Spencer in the distance and set chase at once. Edward raced down the hill. Spencer stopped at Wellsworth Station. The Duke and Duchess wanted to buy some tea and cakes from the refreshment lady. Edward teetered into view. "Hurry up, old boy," laughed Spencer. "Can't have you finishing too far behind me." Edward wished he could have a rest too. But the station master and the porters had heard about the race. "Hooray for Edward!" they cheered. Edward picked up steam and proudly puffed past Spencer. But then the Duke and Duchess finished their tea, and Spencer was off in a flash. He roared past Edward. Fastest and best, he chirruped. Edward was nearly out of puff. The furniture felt heavier than ever. Up ahead, Spencer had to stop. The Duke wanted to take some photographs of the countryside. The Duke set up his camera. Spencer closed his eyes. "Nothing to worry about," he said lazily. Gordon was returning to Brendam Docks. He passed Spencer and knew Edward must be losing the race. "Edward is a waste of steam," he sniffed. But when Gordon passed Edward and saw how hard he was trying, he felt bad about what he had said. "Well done, Edward," he called. "You are a credit to the railway." Edward was so happy his boiler tingled. He found puff he never knew he had. The Duke and Duchess had finished taking photographs and were back on board. "Time to go," said his driver and rang the bell. But nothing happened. Spencer was dreaming of victory. He didn't hear the bell. And he didn't hear Edward puffing past him. Spencer's driver rang the bell again. When Spencer finally opened his eyes, he could see Edward heading towards the summer house. Nearly there, he gasped. Spencer took off as fast as he could. But as he reached the siding, his driver ordered him to slow down. "These are old tracks and you are a very heavy engine," he said. "You must go slowly." Spencer had no choice. He had to slow down. And he trundled slowly down the siding. With every click and every clack, he knew that he had lost the race. Edward puffed towards the summer house. "I've won," he gasped. "I did it." Edward felt like a really useful engine. "Hooray! I've won!" he cheered loudly. Edward felt like the pride of the Sodor Railway. And he was right. The island of Sodor is surrounded by beautiful blue sea. It has fields of green and sandy yellow beaches. There are rivers, streams and lots of trees where the birds sing. There are windmills and a coal mine and docks where visitors to the island arrive. The island also has lots and lots of railway lines. Who's that puffing down the track? It's Thomas. Hello, Thomas. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Island of Sodor. It was a busy time on the Island of Sodor. The railway inspector was coming. Signals were checked. Platforms were scrubbed. Everyone wanted the railway to look its best. At last, the big day was here. "The railway inspector arrives today," the Fat Controller said. "What's a railway inspectacles?" Percy asked. "Railway inspector," Gordon huffed. "He comes to look at the railway every year. He checks everything is spick and span," said Thomas. "This year he is to give a special prize to the best turned out engine," added the Fat Controller. "So I want you all to look your best." "A special prize?" puffed Thomas. "I wonder if we could win?" asked Percy. "Pa," Gordon snorted, "he's bound to give it to an express engine." "Or one with big wheels," said Emily. I think he'll give it to a red engine, James beamed proudly. Don't listen to them, puffed Thomas. A really useful engine can look as grand as any engine. That afternoon, Thomas and Percy arrived at the quarry. But as the stone was loaded onto the trucks, a big cloud of stone whooshed down and landed right on top of Thomas. Yuck, coughed Thomas. Now you'll never win first prize, Percy moaned. Don't worry, Percy, Thomas puffed. All I need is a good washdown. So Thomas raced off. But when he arrived at the washdown, Emily was already there, covered in soap suds. Hurry up! I need to get clean for the inspection. There's no need for you to get clean, said Emily. I'm going to be the grandest engine there. I'll still win first prize, Thomas huffed, and he steamed off to help Percy. Thomas and Percy puffed across the countryside. But when Thomas and Percy arrived at Brendam Docks, they saw the Fat Controller. He was with the railway inspector. Oh no, puffed Thomas, the railway inspector, but I'm still dirty. So Thomas raced back to the washdown. When Thomas got to the washdown, James was already there. I'm going to be the shiniest at the inspection, James sniffed. There's no point in you even being here. This made Thomas cross. He wanted to win first prize more than ever. But James's red coat did look very shiny. I hope my blue coat can look as shiny as James, Thomas puffed to himself, and he steamed back to the docks. Percy and Thomas shunted the quarry trucks into place. When they had finished, Percy was dirty, and Thomas was dirtier than ever. So they raced to the washdown as fast as they could. This time, Gordon was there. All done, Gordon puffed proudly. Thomas thought Gordon looked splendid. Then, James and Emily pulled into the station. They looked splendid too. Emily's wheels looked shinier than ever, and James's red paint sparkled in the sun. Now, Thomas was worried. There's no point in going to the inspection, Thomas puffed sadly. We'll never win. Of course we can win, Percy puffed. We just need a good clean. Percy and Thomas were covered in soap suds. They were scoured and scrubbed and brushed and buffed. Percy loved being washed. But now Thomas was sad. He thought he would never look as grand as the other engines. James, Emily and Gordon were waiting for the railway inspector. The sunlight here makes my dome sparkle, Gordon puffed proudly. It makes my red paint look shinier than ever, said James. And my wheels glimmer, Emily added. The engines tried to find the sunniest spot in the coal yard. So James backed up. Suddenly he bumped into a truck. The truck rolled into a lever. Then there was a whooshing sound. Oh no, James puffed. Coal poured out everywhere. It poured onto the tracks and all over Gordon, James and Emily. They weren't gleaming and shiny anymore. The Fat Controller and the railway inspector arrived. These engines are filthy, the railway inspector said crossly. I've never seen so much coal dust. Just then, Gordon blew to clean his funnel. Coal dust shot into the air. It covered the Fat Controller and the railway inspector. Sorry, coughed Gordon. A At last, Thomas and Percy arrived. When the railway inspector saw Thomas and Percy, he was delighted. "You two are just what engines should look like," he said. Thomas and Percy won first prize. The railway inspector gave them each a special rosette. Thomas and Percy beamed with pride. "I'm glad you made me come to the inspection," puffed Thomas. "It's just like you said," puffed Percy. "A really useful engine can look as grand as any engine." The island of Sodor is surrounded by beautiful blue sea. It has fields of green and sandy yellow beaches. There are rivers, streams and lots of trees where the birds sing. There are windmills and a coal mine and docks where visitors to the island arrive. The island also has lots and lots of railway lines. Who's that puffing down the track? It's Thomas. Hello, Thomas. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Island of Sodor. It was a crisp, cold winter day on the Island of Sodor. Snow lay thick on the ground. The engines were working extra hard. James was pulling the slow goods train. He had stopped at a signal. Percy pulled up alongside, carrying the mail. "Hello, James," said Percy. Then the signal changed to green. "Goodbye, James," whistled Percy, and he was off in a flash. "I was here first," grumbled James. "Why do I have to wait?" "The mail train is more important than slow goods," said his driver. Later, when James stopped for water, Thomas was already in front of him. "I have to go first," said Thomas excitedly. "I'm a guaranteed connection." "Everyone has a more important job than me," grumbled James. "Nonsense," said Thomas. "Everyone knows you're a really useful engine." But James wanted to be an important engine too. Later that day, the Fat Controller came to see James. "You must take coal to all the stations on the island," he boomed. "If the fires in the waiting room go out, the passengers will get cold and complain. It's a very important job," he added. "You can rely on me, sir," said James proudly. The Fat Controller left. James was excited. "An important job," he said happily. "Pah," sniffed Gordon. "It's only a load of coal after all." "Nonsense," snorted James. "I am going to keep the passengers warm. What could be more important than that?" And he wheeshed over to the water tower. But there was a queue at the water tank. "Come on," he steamed impatiently. "I have an important job to do." "Wait your turn, bossy boiler," said Thomas. James felt too important to wait, so he didn't. James rushed to the coaling station. He met Edward waiting at a junction. Edward was looking bothered. He had too many jobs and was feeling puffed out. "Can you take these sleigh trucks to the quarry?" Edward asked. "Sorry, Edward, but I can't," puffed James. "I've got the most important job on the island." And he chuffed grandly away. James arrived at the coaling station. He buffered up to the coal trucks and was on his way. James was looking forward to delivering his coal. Now I'm useful and important, he chuffed happily. Then there was trouble. James puffed harder and harder. He went faster and faster. Then he began to feel hotter and hotter. I don't feel well, wailed James, and he had to stop. Your water tanks have run dry, his driver told him. We'll have to wait for help. Just then, Edward pulled up beside James. Please, push me to the water tank, pleaded James. I'm sorry, Edward puffed sadly. You wouldn't take my trucks to the quarry, and now I'm running late with my passenger train. And Edward steamed away. Edward stopped and told the signalman all about James. The signalman telephoned for help, and soon Salty was on his way. He pulled up alongside James. Why didn't you fill up with water this morning, matey? James told him about the queue at the water tank. I've heard you were too busy to help Edward too, said Salty. I was in a hurry, protested James. Mine is the most important job on the island. No job is more important than helping another engine, said Salty firmly. And deep down in his boiler, James knew Salty was right. Thanks to Salty, James's water tank was soon filled and he was well on his way. He knew he had to make up for lost time. Then James saw Diesel up ahead. He had broken down and looked unhappy. James wanted to tease him, but then he remembered what Salty had said. No job is more important than helping another engine, he said to himself, and even Diesel is an engine. Come on, Diesel, I'll push you back to the sheds. Pushing Diesel and pulling trucks was hard work. At last, James got Diesel to the repair yard, but he still had to deliver his coal. The wind blew, and it was getting colder by the minute. James steamed all over the island, delivering coal to the station waiting rooms. Everyone was pleased to see James. Thanks to him, they were all kept toasty warm. The next morning, the Fat Controller came to see James. He knew all about Edward's trucks and James running out of water. I'm sorry, sir, said James. I put my own job first. But you did learn your lesson and you helped Diesel, the Fat Controller boomed cheerfully. And you delivered your coal on time. You, James, are a really useful engine. James nearly burst with pride. Thank you, sir, he said. Being really useful was better than feeling important. The island of Sodor is surrounded by beautiful blue sea. It has fields of green and sandy yellow beaches. There are rivers, streams, and lots of trees where the birds sing. There are windmills and a coal mine, and docks where visitors to the island arrive. The island also has lots and lots of railway lines. Who's that puffing down the track? It's Thomas. Hello, Thomas. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Island of Sodor. It had been a stormy night on the Island of Sodor. Telegraph poles had blown down. Tiles had been blown off the station roofs. And branches had fallen onto the lines. All over the island, the storm had made a terrible mess. The Fat Controller came to Tidmouth's sheds. "The storm has caused confusion and delay," he boomed. "So you must all be really useful engines." "I'll be the most useful engine," boasted James. "No, I will," sniffed Gordon. "I'm the fastest. I'll do the most journeys." Thomas hoped he could finish his special as quickly as possible. He wanted to do the most journeys and be the most useful engine of all. Soon all the engines were steaming away from Tidmouth's sheds. James went to Knapford Yard to pick up the workmen. Gordon went to the goods yard to collect telegraph poles. Toby trundled to collect new roof tiles. And Thomas steamed over to Marron Station. Farmer McColl was waiting for Thomas. Next to him were boxes and boxes of newly laid eggs. "These fresh eggs are needed across the island," said Farmer McColl. The station staff quickly loaded Thomas's trucks with the eggs, and Thomas was raring to go. "My eggs must be delivered safely," said Farmer McColl, "so I am coming to make sure you go slowly and carefully." "Slowly?" wheezed Thomas sadly. He wanted to finish his job quickly and make lots of journeys. Thomas gave one sad toot of his whistle and slowly pulled away. Thomas trundled on. He huffed and puffed as gently as he could. Thomas had to stop at a crossing. Gordon steamed by. "Fastest and best," he chirruped. Gordon looked very happy. Thomas felt very sad. Thomas pulled into Maithwaite Station. James was waiting. He was carrying workmen. They were fixing the station house roof. Station staff unloaded 4 boxes of eggs for the village store. "How many journeys have you done?" asked James brightly. "This is my first," said Thomas. "Ah!" huffed James. "I'm on my 3rd. I'm as ready to rock it and twice as fast." And he steamed quickly out of the station. Thomas was upset. He wanted to go fast more than ever. Now the eggs were unloaded and Thomas chuffed slowly out of the station. Thomas puffed across the countryside, very, very slowly. Then Thomas saw Toby taking on coal in the siding. His trucks were full of roof tiles. Toby was having a wonderful day. "I'm on my 2nd journey," he whistled proudly. Thomas was very sad. Toby rushed past him. It made Thomas want to go faster than ever. "Even Toby has made more journeys than me," he moaned. "It's not fair. I can be fast and careful." So Thomas started to speed up. "Fast and careful, fast and careful," he huffed happily. But Thomas was going so fast he wasn't being careful. Farmer McColl was worried. "Slow down, Thomas," he called. "You will break my eggs." But Thomas was going so quickly he didn't hear Farmer McColl. And he didn't slow down. He went even faster. The eggs started to bounce in their boxes. Then Thomas changed lines. It caused a big bump. The eggs were breaking. Thomas came to a junction. He had to slow down. "Stop, Thomas!" cried Farmer McColl. "You have broken my eggs!" This time Thomas did hear Farmer McColl, and he stopped right away. "Cinders and ashes!" he cried. But Farmer McColl was still cross. Thomas felt bad. "I'm sorry," he whistled. "I just wanted to be really useful." Farmer McColl checked his eggs. Luckily, only a few were broken. Now Thomas knew he had to go slowly, so he pulled away as gently as he could. Thomas headed for Brendam Docks. Suddenly he heard an impatient toot. James was behind him. He blew his whistle loudly, but Thomas knew he couldn't speed up. "Sometimes going slowly can be just as important as going fast," said Thomas, and he puffed carefully on. That evening, the Fat Controller came to Tidmouth Sheds. He looked very pleased. "You have all worked hard and been really useful engines," he said proudly. The engines were very happy, except for Thomas. He was thinking about the broken eggs. "I only made one journey, sir," he said sadly, "and I broke Farmer McColl's eggs." "But most of the eggs were delivered safely," boomed the Fat Controller. "Farmer McColl gave the broken ones to me, and I love having scrambled eggs for my tea. You, Thomas," he added, "are a really useful engine." Thomas just beamed. The island of Sodor is surrounded by beautiful blue sea. It has fields of green and sandy yellow beaches. There are rivers, streams and lots of trees where the birds sing. There are windmills and a coal mine and docks where visitors to the island arrive. The island also has lots and lots of railway lines. Who's that puffing down the track? It's Thomas. Hello, Thomas. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Island of Sodor. Toby is a steam tram. He looks very different from the other engines. He is square and his body is made of wood. Toby isn't as strong as the other engines, but he always tries his hardest. One morning, Toby was delivering some milk trucks. He puffed across the island and up Gordon's Hill. Gordon's Hill was very steep. Toby puffed hard. It was a long climb. Just then, Gordon arrived at the bottom of the hill. But today the express was heavy, and Gordon had to wait for Edward to help. "Bother," huffed Gordon. Soon, Edward puffed to the rescue. He buffered up behind Gordon. Edward pushed and Gordon pulled. At last, the express train started to move. Toby had finally reached the top of the hill when Gordon puffed past. "Slow, coach," Gordon huffed. "I'm trying my hardest," gasped Toby. "Ah," sniffed Gordon, "you're not even a proper engine." This made Toby feel very sad. That night, the Fat Controller came to see Toby. "Edward is needed at the docks," the Fat Controller said. "You are to work at Wellsworth Yard in his place." "But I'll never be able to do Edward's job," Toby cried. "He's a proper steam engine." "Nonsense," said the Fat Controller. "You are one of my engines and you must be useful." Toby was very worried. What if he wasn't useful? The next morning, Toby puffed nervously out of his shed. I hope no one needs pushing up Gordon's hill, puffed Toby. Toby wished he was a proper steam engine. At last, Toby arrived at Wellsworth Yard. There were lots of trucks, and they looked very heavy. I'll never be able to shunt all those, Toby puffed. You can do it, Toby, called Thomas. That made Toby feel much better. Then he started to shunt the trucks. He shunted coal trucks for Henry and sleigh trucks for Donald. He even shunted fruit and vegetable trucks for Douglas. Maybe I can do it, Toby chuffed. But then Gordon puffed past. He was pulling the express with lots of coaches. Toby watched as Gordon puffed towards the hill. Gordon puffed with all his might, but once again the express was too heavy. Gordon was stuck. Bother, he huffed. Gordon's driver called the yard manager, and the yard manager came to see Toby. You need to push Gordon to the top of the hill, the yard manager said. Yes, sir, groaned Toby. But Gordon looked much too heavy for me to push, Toby puffed nervously. Don't worry, Thomas called. You can do it, Toby. I'll do me best, he puffed, and he chuffed off to Gordon's hill. When Gordon heard that Toby was coming, he was very cross. Toby's only a steam tram, Gordon huffed. He will never be able to push me up the hill. Toby buffered up behind Gordon. Then he pushed with all his might. Gordon didn't move. Is that the best you can do? Gordon snorted. They should have sent a proper engine. Toby was about to give up. But then he remembered what Thomas had said. I can do it, Toby panted. Toby pushed harder and harder. Suddenly, Gordon's wheels started to move. Toby kept pushing. His engines roared and his axles ached. Gordon moved slowly up the hill. When Percy saw Toby pushing, he blew his whistle with excitement. You can do it, Toby, go on, cried Percy. Toby huffed and puffed and chuffed, but at last he pushed Gordon right to the top of the hill. Gordon was impressed. Now his express would run on time. Toby was tired, but he was very proud. I did it, he puffed excitedly. That night, the Fat Controller came to see Toby. Today you wear a very useful engine indeed, he said. Thank you, sir, Toby chuffed. And even though Toby was a steam tram, he felt like a proper engine after all. The island of Sodor is surrounded by beautiful blue sea. It has fields of green and sandy yellow beaches. There are rivers, streams and lots of trees where the birds sing. There are windmills and a coal mine, and docks where visitors to the island arrive. The island also has lots and lots of railway lines. Who's that puffing down the track? It's Thomas. Hello, Thomas. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Island of Sodor. It was a windy day on the Island of Sodor. Trees were blown, leaves were scattered, and the Fat Controller's hat flew away. The engines were looking forward to the annual Sodor Flower Show. At Tidmouth Sheds, the Fat Controller had news of an important special. It must get to Maithwaite Station before the world-famous opera singer Alicia Botti arrives, he boomed. Alicia Botti was coming to open the flower show. The engines were very excited. They all wanted to collect the special, but the Fat Controller gave the job to Percy. Percy was delighted. But after the Fat Controller left, Gordon and James were sniffy. "It can't be that special," boasted Gordon, "or the Fat Controller would have sent me." "Oh, me," added James. "A red engine would be just the thing." Percy wondered what the special could be. He steamed out of Tidmouth Sheds as fast as he could. Percy arrived at Brendam Docks, just as Cranky unloaded his special. Percy was disappointed to see it was a roll of carpet. "What's so special about a carpet?" he wished gloomily. "Maybe it's a magic carpet," said Salty. "I've heard tell of them that can fly. Do you know any magic words?" said Salty. "You mean like please?" asked Percy hopefully. "No, Percy," said Salty. "Other magic words like ay, presto, hocus pocus, and abracadabra." Cranky had lowered the carpet onto Percy's flatbed. "It doesn't look very magic," said Percy sadly. But as Percy puffed away, the carpet unrolled, as if by magic. Percy puffed as quickly as he could. He had to stop at a junction. Gordon was waiting there. When Gordon saw what Percy's special was, he sniffed louder than ever. "A carpet? No wonder the Fat Controller gave the job to a small engine." Just then the wind whistled and whirled, and the carpet flew into the air. "Look," Percy cried, "it is a magic carpet. It can fly." "That's not magic," snorted Gordon. "That's just the wind." Murdoch passed by pulling a long train, and the carpet suddenly dropped onto one of his trucks. "It is a magic carpet," wailed Percy, "and it's going without me." Percy chased after Murdoch. "Wait for me," he cried. "Please, wait." But Murdoch didn't hear Percy. Murdoch passed through Marron Station. James was taking on passengers. "Help!" Percy cried. "Murdoch has got my magic carpet." "There's no such thing as a magic carpet," huffed James. Just then, the carpet lifted off Murdoch's truck and glided onto Toby's roof. "See?" cried Percy. "It is magic. It can fly." Percy raced after Toby. Until finally, Toby pulled into Kelsthorpe Station. Percy pulled in as fast as he could. "Wait!" cried Percy. and Toby didn't move, but the carpet did. It flew off Toby and landed on the tracks. "Help!" cried Percy. "My magic carpet!" Gordon was even less impressed than before. "Still trying to make your little job look important," he grumbled. Then there was trouble. Thomas was coming, and he was on the same track as the carpet. So Percy and Gordon blew their whistles as loud as they could, but Thomas couldn't stop in time. "I'll say a magic word," cried Percy. "Hey presto! Hocus pocus! Abracadabra!" he cried, but the carpet didn't move. "Please," puffed Percy hopefully. Suddenly the wind whistled and the carpet flapped. It lifted off the tracks and fluttered onto Percy's flatbed. "It is magic," gasped Gordon. "And I'm going to be late," puffed Percy. Percy's driver had tied the carpet down, and Percy steamed off as fast as he could. Percy puffed in to Maithwaite Station. The Fat Controller was waiting for him. Percy told him about the magic carpet. "It tried to get away," he gasped, "and caused confusion and delay." The Fat Controller laughed. Oh, there's no such thing as a magic carpet," he boomed. "But you, Percy, are on time and a really useful engine." Percy felt very proud. Soon the carpet was unloaded and put into place. Gordon arrived with Alicia Botted. And the flower show was an enormous success. And even though the Fat Controller had said the carpet wasn't magic, Percy and Gordon were not so sure. The island of Sodor is surrounded by beautiful blue sea. It has fields of green and sandy yellow beaches. There are rivers, streams and lots of trees where the birds sing. There are windmills and a coal mine and docks where visitors to the island arrive. The island also has lots and lots of railway lines. Who's that puffing down the track? It's Thomas. Hello, Thomas. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Island of Sodor. It was a glorious day on the Island of Sodor. Villagers, children, even the Fat Controller was excited. The circus was coming. The engines were thrilled. They loved the circus too. Percy loved the horses. James loved the clowns. Children gathered on the bridges. They were waiting to see the circus pass by. Thomas became more and more excited. Everyone wanted to collect the circus from Brendam Docks. The Fat Controller came to Tidmouth Sheds. He had exciting news for Thomas. "Thomas, you are to collect the circus," he boomed. Thomas was very happy. Pulling the circus sounded like wonderful fun. "But if there are too many trucks for you to pull, you must share the work with another engine." Percy and James were pleased. Maybe they'd get to pull the circus after all. Thomas puffed over to Brendam Docks. Thomas steamed into the docks. Cranky was unloading the circus. Thomas was amazed. There were trailers and horse boxes, colourful costumes, coaches and flatbeds as far as the eye could see. Thomas was so excited his axles tingled. The acrobats and clowns climbed aboard Annie and Clarabel. Thomas buffered up to collect the coach. Do you want a wheel there, matey?" asked Salty cheerfully. Thomas remembered what the Fat Controller had said about sharing the work. But the band started playing and everybody was cheering. Thomas thought this was the most wonderful special ever. Even though the train was very heavy, he didn't want to share it. "No, thank you, Salty," he gasped. "I can do it on my own." And Thomas took the biggest puff he could and slowly pulled away. Thomas trundled through the countryside. His pistons pumped and his traction rods rattled. But Thomas didn't notice. He was having far too much fun. Thomas puffed towards Maron Station. He had a wonderful surprise. Passengers and staff waved and cheered as he passed by. The band played on, and Thomas blew his whistle in time with the trumpet. Thomas felt very special. Pulling the circus was lots of fun. Thomas stopped by a bridge. Percy was waiting there too. Children waved to Thomas and the circus. Thomas blew his whistle. Percy wanted to join in. "Is there anything I can take?" Percy asked hopefully. But Thomas wanted to keep all the fun to himself. "No, thank you," he gasped. "I can do it all on my own." Percy watched Thomas and the circus slowly chuff away. He felt very disappointed. Thomas puffed on. The train started to feel heavier and heavier. His traction rods were rattling more than ever. Thomas stopped at a junction. James was waiting in a siding. James thought the band sounded very jolly. "If you want to uncouple some trucks," he said hopefully, "I could take them for you." "No, thank you," gasped Thomas. "I can do it all on my own." He didn't want to miss out on any of the fun. Thomas steamed on, but every huff and every chuff got harder and harder. Thomas passed through the next station, but he was almost out of puff. Thomas wasn't having fun anymore. Then there was trouble. With a horrible creak and a terrible crack, Thomas's traction rods broke. Thomas stopped with a jolt. Suddenly, it was very quiet. Thomas felt very sad. Thomas's driver telephoned for help. Even the performers practicing in the field didn't make Thomas feel better. Thomas wished he had shared the heavy load. Soon, Percy and James arrived. James brought new traction rods and Percy brought hay for the horses, but Thomas still felt miserable. "I wish I'd shared the work with you," he said sadly. "Don't worry," puffed Percy. "We can all have fun now," said James cheerfully. And he was right. While Thomas's traction rods were replaced, they all enjoyed watching the circus performers practice. Then, Thomas shared out the trucks. Percy took the horses, James took the performers, then the band started playing. "This is fun," puffed Thomas. All three engines blew their whistles and the long and jolly train set off. Later, the friends watched as the big tent was put up. "Thank you for helping me," puffed Thomas. "Sharing your work makes things much easier, but sharing the fun is the best fun of all." And everyone agreed.